Hey, everybody. Today we have for you podcast number 94. Today's podcast is titled, So You Think You Want to Start Something New. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. We are Dr. Pete and Sandy Lombardi, and this is the Limitless Life Network podcast where we flesh out the limitations that are preventing you from reaching your goals and living the life that you are called to lead. Sandy, what do you think about that?
Exciting topic.
Sandy is fired up tonight. She is got the giggles. So
this is take number 3 because I couldn't stop laughing.
Yeah, which is great. So we're going in with lots of enthusiasm, and we hope that you're having a fantastic day. Super hot today.
Yes.
Super hot. Wow. We are experiencing a heat wave, and it's been hot. So well hydrated, though. We are well hydrated and ready to get rocking here. So as always, I appreciate you guys for listening. I saw people shared last week the podcast on their social media. Shout out to Julie Titus for that. I saw that. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate you. And also other people, saying that they listen to the podcast. I appreciate all of you. So we just love doing this, and we look forward to hearing feedback, and it's been great. So enjoying the journey. So on with the show, as I have coined that phrase now, that's part of the podcast intro. Today's title, So You Say You Want to Start Something New. So what's this all about? Where did we come up with this idea?
We're going to try something new this week for ourselves on the podcast. We're just going to have it be a little more spontaneous. Mm-hmm. And so this topic was from our weekend. We spent, Nate and Sam had their grand opening at their chiropractic office called Primal Chiropractic in Fayetteville. And so super excited for them. They had first new patient Monday morning. And so a lot going on, and we just pulled points out of that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because we've kind of just pulled points from being observers of their journey, right? And it's fun because it makes me think back of all the times that I've started something new, or we've embarked on a journey together, starting something new. Yeah. So, and hopefully you guys have had some of these experiences. You'll probably relate to a lot of this stuff that we talk about today. But there's some great lessons. So let's get on with it. So, point number 1 is.
It begins with an idea.
Yeah, it begins with an idea. So, we gave a couple of examples when we were preambling. We had a mini podcast before the podcast started, and I was saying, well, a lot of people have this idea like, oh man, it'd be great to start a restaurant, own my own restaurant. And you're like, yeah, I would serve, like maybe a favorite family dish, right, or whatever it would be. And I'd be like, yeah, I'd have my dad's sauce or my aunt's macaroni or, whatever it would be. And then you're like, wait a second.
They're open 6 days a week.
Yeah. Do I really want that type of a career? Is that really for me? So, but when you do it and you have an idea that is meaningful to you, that's where it begins. And it's, you have unlimited options in front of you. We went to a restaurant recently with a lot of options. Do you remember?
Which one?
On Sunday, we went to that Mexican restaurant.
Oh yeah.
And there were
too many.
It was literally a small type too. And it was 2 sides of this thing, and there were hundreds of options. It was like as much as a Chinese restaurant menu. And so I was like, wow, this is overwhelming. So oftentimes when you have a blank slate in front of you and you have this idea and you're trying to figure it out, it can be overwhelming, but at the same time, it's very exciting, right?
Yeah.
And there's an analogy too that I came up with. It was like if someone told you to paint a picture or draw a picture, I would be like, okay. And you'd look around the room and you'd find something in the room and you'd be like, okay, I'll draw a picture of that chair. And you could draw a picture of the chair, the lamp, or the desk, or whatever, and it would be kind of a boring picture.
Right.
But our kids, when they're young, they just sit down to start drawing, and we've saved a lot of their artwork because it's really amazing how their minds work, and they will literally draw out an entire story.
They'd have hundreds of people in these pictures.
Yeah, they would have
Little
hundreds
stick
of
figures
people, and they would have different things, and I mean, it's just super, super detailed.
spend hours and hours on one picture.
Yeah, and so it makes me realize, like, if you really want to be successful, when you have a vision and you're beginning with this idea, you've got to really create a blueprint, and that blueprint has to have a lot of detail to it. And the more details that you add, the more vivid it becomes, the more vital it becomes. And that's really, I heard those two things from John DeMartini years ago. And I forget what exactly the quote was, but it was something like, the more detail that you add, the more vivid and the vision becomes.
Okay. Yeah.
So details are super, super important. So if you have an idea that you want to pursue, think of it like a house. Come up with a blueprint. And the blueprint to building the house has tons and tons of details. So when you don't have details, then you tend to
overlook things.
You things, you leave things out, it becomes incomplete. And but it has to begin with the idea, and the idea has to be motivating. It's got to be something that you're excited about, you're passionate about, because otherwise it'll just be tabled.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that leads us to point number
2.
Yeah, so
The behind the scenes, what no one else sees.
yeah, behind the scenes, what no one else sees. And if you think about like a musical or a Broadway production, behind the scenes, like all the rehearsals that go into it, like and building the set and all the, singing and dancing and choreography and music, like lighting, there's so many things, and I don't even know anything about that stuff. And that's just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So imagine if that was your career, how detailed that actually becomes.
Right. Well, I was involved in my first play with the kids at Co-op this fall, or spring rather. And oh my goodness, we finally got to the dress rehearsal at the actual theater. And backstage, those of us who'd never been in theater before, were like, how do you know when to open the curtain? Like the little, like when do we change scenes? Like we needed all the little details written out for us on the script.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like Nate and Sam have been working on this thing for months to get it launched, and people that showed up for the open house see the finished product, right? They see this beautiful office that's everything matches. It's beautiful. The paint, the logo. I mean, the furniture, the tables, like everything. The computers, the way everything. There's just all this intention that is put into the design and layout and the aesthetics of it. So it's this great looking office. And that doesn't even include like when you actually operate it, because that part is a whole other behind the scenes things. Like you've got to have systems and procedures in place to actually operate a business. So, there was just so much that they didn't know going into it, and it's been a huge learning process for them. So, and that's pretty cool, because nobody sees all that stuff.
Right. Well, and that's so much of the benefit, right? The learning process. Like they had to learn about electrical codes and building codes and all kinds of things, right?
Oh,
putting
codes.
in X-ray unit and the requirements for that, and
and dealing with New York State,
the banks.
Dealing with financing
elements of
and setting up a business, setting up the name of the business, all of the entity, all of that stuff. It's like you end up just going down this journey that you've never even thought was part of the finished product that you think about.
Right.
But there's all these things that have to happen.
But they're kind of gaining that blueprint that you spoke about, like now when they go to open a second office, they'll have all of this already recorded and
Hopefully it's
Yeah,
recorded.
I'm sure. Well, it's in their memory right now for sure.
I know it is. It's actually great. So that brings us to point number 3.
Which is building your social network.
Yeah. So, along the journey that they've been going on, they've been meeting all kinds of new people. And that's kind of exciting. It's kind of scary. And you're not sure what's going to come out of it, right? So, a social network is obviously the people that you can call on for assistance or help, right? And to make anything new, you need help. Because just doing something all alone by yourself is really limiting, and this is about limitless, right? So the bigger and more effective your social network is, the more things that you can accomplish for the good. And I mean, that's kind of what, bringing it back to the Bible, that's what Jesus did. He created a social network. He created a bunch of disciples that he trained and appointed and put out there to do work. And that's basically what we do day in and day out, is we look for people that we can trust, people that are, on time, return phone calls, return emails. Like, that's part of, your social network, is that you can rely on people. And then the same thing is that in turn, are you reliable? So do you return phone calls and emails? Are you reliable? Are you willing to go the extra mile for somebody else? Because we love it when somebody goes the extra mile for us, but are you willing to go the extra mile for someone else? So it works both ways, because that's really what networking is. It should be a symbiotic relationship, not a parasitic relationship. Right. So it's not just trying to get from somebody.
And Saturday was that was awesome to stand back and watch them networking, and different individuals from the community came, doulas, another provider, medical. Yeah, she was in the speech realm.
Therapist. Yeah.
Coaching, life coaching. So it was great to see them networking, and they'll be able to refer and to be referred to. So it was really good.
Yeah, it was great. So that was awesome. And another chiropractor came as well, which is really awesome to see, that another chiropractor was like not looking at it as competition, but looking at it as like, hey, I'm here to support you guys, to help you out. So that was fantastic. And so think about that. Your social network is super important, and it's people that you can count on, people that you can trust, that are reliable. So that brings us to point number 4, which is,
you don't know what you don't know.
Isn't that true? Yeah. So it sounds very redundant, but this is fantastic. It's good and bad all at once, and I love that about this. You don't know what you don't know. When you start out on a journey like this, the fact that you don't know everything is actually good. Your bit of not being naive is actually super beneficial, because when you're going to take the risk, you're going to go forward with it, and you're going to start, which is the hardest thing for people to do, is you're going to start down that path, and you don't know everything, but you're going this way because this is what we're going to do. And that naivety, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, or is that even a word? But being naive is a blessing, and it's also a curse, because you're obviously going to make mistakes, and you're going to run into problems, and you're going to come up against walls that are barriers to your progress. But at the same time, it's the opportunity to learn when you come up against those barriers, and it all comes down to one word: adaptability. And the more adaptable that you are in those situations, the faster you're going to grow, the faster you're going to get toward your destination or the launch of your new thing that you're doing, whatever it might be, whether it's building a house or a business or, a relationship or an organization, whatever you're trying to launch, write a book. When you come up against resistance, how quickly can you adapt? And being naive is great because you're going to come up with all these different things that you run into. Like, oh, we just found out that we have to get a permit for this now. Like, okay, we'll go get the permit.
Right.
And you just go do it. Whatever you got to do. You just jump through all the hoops so you can get to the finish line.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and better to be naive than to have like a past experience that's sabotaging your effort. So if that's, one of our listeners where you're feeling, well, I used to be naive, but now I know better, and like this almost negative, it's best to flip it again and go at it with some open-minded and just jump at it.
Yeah. That youthful enthusiasm. If you can just remember back to the time when, right?
Yeah.
When you weren't as scared or as concerned. Like, I think people, as we get older, we get more and more conservative, right?
Nate and Sam are willing to take more risk.
Yeah, but like you were saying, is that just because you've been jaded in the past, it doesn't mean like that's always going to happen to you. And really, don't be stuck on that. Adapt and overcome. That's really the motto of the Marines, right? Survive, adapt, and overcome. And move on to the next, right? All right, so that brings us to
point number 5.
Oh, yeah.
Focus on the long game.
Yeah, focusing on the long game sounds like, oh, yeah, that's easy. That's simple advice. But you know what? You live your life one day at a time. And every day you have to get up and go face the music and deal with the problems, deal with the possibilities, deal with all the people. And some days are going to be easier than others. Some days are going to feel like diamonds, and other days are going to feel like, just absolute terrible, And what are you focusing on? And I mentioned this to Sandy in the preamble that before we started going on the air. I said a long time ago, a chiropractor said to me, he said, you could take care of 100 people in a day, and one person can have a bad experience, doesn't like you, and 99 of them loved you. And they were grateful for your services, and some of them even, thanked you, went out of their way to maybe even give you a gift or something. And who do you go home thinking about that night? You go home thinking about the one instead of the 99. And it's really a disservice to the 99 because you're renting your upstairs to that one, and they're living there rent free, and it's like, that's not what you should be doing. We know that, but because we're compelled to want to make everybody happy and serve everybody, and here's the bottom line: you're never going to make everybody happy. There's going to be mistakes because you're dealing with human beings. There's going to be problems that occur. There's going to be miscommunications that happen. But focus on the long game. Focus on the people that love and appreciate you, and you're going to be a lot happier mentally, and you'll sleep much better at night. And certainly when something does go wrong, problem solve it. Like try to fix it instead of burying it, because it's going to happen. So you just don't want it to keep happening. You don't want recurring problems to happen. So focus on the long game, focus on the positives, and don't give as much power to the things that are negative. Because otherwise you get discouraged,
right?
And you want to quit. And I was talking to somebody about that's been in business a really, really long time. And, they're kind of losing their passion. They're losing their passion. They're losing their excitement. They don't really have a vision for the future. They want to get out. And so when a negative thing happens, that's all they can think about. And it's just that reason to get out, right? The reason to retire. And somebody's new in business, they're focused on the long game. They have to be.
Well, and I think too, like the person that he's speaking of, it was a customer that was just really rude and dissatisfied, and they were rightfully dissatisfied with the way they handled it wasn't appropriate. And so the business owner addressed the situation as best they could. They did, and they made steps to prevent it from happening again. But then at some point you've got to decide that's on that person, the way they responded, and they did not have any grace or forgiveness, and it was extended. So you got to let some of those people just go, right? They're not who you want to be in relationship with. We talked in point 3 about your social network. Like that's not someone you want in your social network. So it's better to let them go.
Right. Yeah, and I think we have a hard time sometimes realizing that it's okay to, let people go, because we have a heart to serve,
Right.
and we care about people. But at some point, it becomes a toxic relationship. It's not good. So if you ever find yourself ruminating over a bad experience, let it go. Yeah. Forgive them for their lack of grace and move on from that.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, great podcast. Well done. All right. So that's all we have for this week's edition of your weekly Limitless Life Network podcast. Be sure to tune in each and every week so you can stay connected, be inspired, and keep moving toward your best life by stripping away all those limitations. And we will see you back next week.
Enjoy your week.
Enjoy your week.